Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the shadows with someone whose job was as silent as it was deadly, the medieval assassin. In an age of dark alleys and darker deeds, we're diving into a story that's surprisingly cozy, for a tale of murder under moonlight. Forget chivalrous knights and noble quests. This journey is all about survival in its grittiest form. So fluff up your pillow, dim the lantern light, and get comfortable. Let's tiptoe through the cobbled streets of the past as we find out exactly why it truly sucked to be a medieval assassin. In this soft-spoken trek back in time, you'll slip into the worn boots of a desperate soul forced into the shadows. Don't worry, we'll keep things gentle and easy to follow, even if our subject's job was anything but. This isn't the glamorous life of a storybook rogue or a video game hero. It's a cold, hungry existence lurking on the margins of history. Take a deep breath and relax. The wind outside is howling softly, but you're safe and warm. Just listen to the story and let yourself drift into this medieval night. You never planned to become a killer. Yet here you are, pressed against a damp timber wall in a crooked alley, heart thudding in your chest as you clutch a rusty dagger. A hungry belly and a ruthless world have left you no choice. Rain drips from the eaves above, tapping your shoulder like cold fingers. The taste of stale bread lingers on your tongue from the meager scraps you scavenged today. It wasn't enough. It's never enough. Hunger gnaws at your insides, a constant reminder of why you're out here in the darkness instead of asleep by a hearth. Every ragged breath you draw feels heavy with regret and resolve. It's the Middle Ages, and life is brutish and short for folks like you. Kings and nobles wage wars and feuds, but it's the common people who starve. Honor and goodness don't fill your stomach. You tried honest work once, toiling in the fields, apprenticing under a blacksmith, but bad luck and barren harvests left no work for an extra pair of hands. When winter came, and the grain stores emptied, you remember the pangs of hunger twisting your gut so fiercely you thought you might collapse. Perhaps you even heard whispers of people so desperate during the famine that they boiled roots or ate tree bark to survive. You promised yourself you'd never let it come to that. Yet starvation makes any promise hard to keep. So, when that one-eyed mercenary sidled up to you in the tavern and offered a handful of coins to do a job, you didn't laugh or refuse. You lowered your eyes, swallowed what little pride you had left, and gave a silent nod. That was the day you stepped over the edge from a life of scrabbling honesty into a world of shadows and violence. The mercenary reeked of sweat and cheap ale as he explained whose throat you'd be cutting. Some minor lord wanted a rival gone. In an age when kings casually hire murderers to do their dirty work, why wouldn't a petty noble do the same? You've heard the stories. Even King John of England once paid good silver to have his own nephew assassinated when the boy threatened his throne. If a king could snuff out kin without remorse, what chance does a low-born merchant or a pesky rival have? That cold logic terrified you, and convinced you, after that meeting. There was no turning back. The mercenary gave you a few coins up front, hush money and incentive which jingled heavily in your pocket as you left the tavern. In the days that followed, you prepared as best you could for the task ahead. Not that you had much to work with. It's not as if there's a secret guild of assassins to teach you the trade. No mentor, no manual. Your training consisted of tavern brawls and hard lessons life had already taught you. You sharpened your little dagger, nothing more than a kitchen knife with delusions of grandeur, and practiced creeping in and out of your drafty loft without making the floorboards creak. Each night, you lay on your straw mattress picturing the moment to come, trying to banish the quiver in your gut. By dusk today, as the appointed hour crept closer, a grim resolve settled in your bones. Predator or prey, you made your choice. Chivalry and lofty ideals are luxuries for those with full bellies and safe castles. You gave up on any knightly notions of honor the night you first slid a blade under your belt. You still recall how your hands trembled as you tucked that dagger against your hip. It felt absurdly heavy, as if the steel carried the weight of sin, but the memory of your ribs aching with hunger was heavier. Just one job, you told yourself, one kill, and the coins would buy enough bread to keep you alive through the next month. Maybe then you could get back on the right path. Maybe there'd be no second time. A distant church bell tolls midnight, shaking you from your thoughts. You peer from beneath the frayed hood of your cloak. The moon slips out from behind ragged clouds, painting silver on the wet cobblestones in the distance. A lone torch bobbles perhaps a town guard on his rounds, or just a drunkard weaving home. Either way, you press your back further into the shadows, making yourself part of the wall. The air is damp and carries the smell of smoke from dying hearth fires. You breathe slow and quiet, trying to steady the adrenaline rush pounding in your ears. Failure is not an option. Not only would bungling this job cost you the payment you need, it could cost your life. Medieval justice is not known for mercy. If you're caught, no one will speak up for a low-born killer. The Lord who hired you would wash his hands of the whole affair. You've heard how authorities deal with murderers and traitors, a swift hanging if you're lucky, or something far more gruesome and public if you're not. You shudder at the thought of iron shackles and the executioner's axe, or worse. No, you vow silently, I will not be caught, hiding in the darkness like this. You recall the wild tales shared in whispers at the tavern. They spoke of an elite clan of assassins from the distant east, the Hashashin. According to Crusader legends, these killers were stealthy, fearless fanatics armed with blades and bizarre devotion. It said their mysterious master, the old man of the mountain, would drug young followers with hashish and give them a taste of a heavenly paradise, only to promise them a return to that paradise if they obeyed his orders. Supposedly, those men would slip into castles and camps to eliminate princes and generals, utterly unafraid of death. The stories made it sound like those assassins followed a strict code, almost a creed of their own. But that's just legend, half fascinating, half frightening. Your reality is much lonelier. There's no secret order or higher cause guiding you. No whispered creed to live by. The only creed you know are those wild tales of hashish-fueled assassins from far-off lands. A far cry from your grim existence. Here and now, it's just you, a blade, and an empty stomach to feed. No paradise awaits you after this. Just a few coins and maybe a loaf of bread if all goes well. Your heart jolts as you catch the faint sound of footsteps approaching on the slick street. This is it. The mark is coming. By now. Your fingers have gone numb from clutching the dagger so tightly. You flex them and reposition your grip, mind racing through the plan one last time. Truth be told, it's less a plan and more a desperate prayer surprise him. Knife to the ribs. then vanish into the night. You've rehearsed it in your head over and over. Still, a bead of sweat rolls down your neck despite the chill. You remind yourself that the man coming into view deserves this. He's no saint. Just another pawn in a cruel game. In truth, you know very little about him beyond his name, but you've decided it doesn't matter. If you hesitate, you lose, so you banish any second thoughts and reduce him, in your mind, to just an obstacle between you and your next meal. The lantern he carries sways. You slink through a narrow, winding alley, boots sinking into wet mud with each step. The night air is thick and cool against your cheeks, carrying the stench of rot and refuse tossed from windows above. In the distance, a stray cat knocks over a clay jar, the sudden clatter setting your pulse hammering in your ears before you force yourself to breathe again. You glide from one patch of shadow to the next, keeping your target's flickering lantern light just in view ahead. Every movement is deliberate. Silent, there will be no applause for your stealth. Only the drip of water from the eaves and the squelch of muck underfoot to mark your passing. There is no banner with your crest flying high tonight. No cheering crowd awaiting a triumphant return. You realize, with wry resignation, that there's no fame in this profession at all. The greatest success you can hope for is to remain unseen and unknown. If you do your job, no one will ever know you were here. Your name will slip through history's fingers like rain through cobblestones in the stories told by firelight. Heroes earn glory rescuing maidens or vanquishing dragons, but you skulk in the darkness behind a doomed man, with only the rats and stray dogs as witnesses to your bravery. A faint glow from your mark's lantern dances along the alley's damp brick walls as he turns a corner. You pause, pressing your back to the cold stone. The clammy chill seeps through your tunic. There is a dull ache in your thighs from crouching and a foul wetness seeping into your boots. Glamorous work indeed. You think wryly. No troubadour will strum a lute and sing of these moments of aching legs and stinking shoes. The only song accompanying you now is the distant drip of water and your own muffled breath. A fine serenade for an unsung assassin. You tilt your head just enough to peek around the corner. Your mark, a burly man in a travel-stained cloak, stops under a sputtering wall torch to check over his shoulder. Instinctively, you shrink back into the darkness, heart thudding. A moment later, he continues on. Oblivious, you exhale a plume of white breath in the cold night air. Close call, but even as your nerves settle, a familiar realization gnaws at you even if you succeed and eliminate this man. There will be no praise, no credit, at best. Your employer might give a satisfied nod in some secret meeting and press a few coins into your palm, then send you on your way through the servants' entrance. There will be no public reward or recognition, quite the opposite. You'll skulk out of the city by dawn, unremarked and unnamed, just as you entered. History rarely bothered to learn the likes of you. Kings and generals have their names inked in chronicles and carved on monuments. But the hired knife remains a ghost. You recall one particularly grim story whispered among those of your trade, a cautionary tale of how a band of invisible men once shaped great events, and yet remained invisible themselves. Years ago, in the heart of Paris, a powerful duke decided to rid himself of a rival, instead of meeting honorably on a battlefield at dawn. He paid a small army of killers to do the deed on a moonless November night in a crooked back street. 15 masked men closed in around the unsuspecting Louis of Orleans as he traveled by horse. They dragged the nobleman from his saddle and butchered him there on the cobbles. The Duke who ordered it, John of Burgundy, achieved his dark purpose. His rival lay dead. But of those hired assassins who carried out the bloody work, not a single name was celebrated or recorded in any song or chronicle. In the hush of taverns and guardrooms, people remember the shock of that murder, how a prince's blood flowed freely across a Parisian street. They remember the boldness of Duke John the Fearless in orchestrating such a deed against a royal. But the men who actually slipped their blades into Louis's body, they remain phantoms. History might note that masked figures struck him down, but it never cares to mention who they were. Those killers vanished as soon as their grim task was done, snuffing out their torches in the mud and fleeing under cover of darkness. They melted away so completely it was as if shadows themselves had done the deed. No honor was ever bestowed upon them, only quiet, fearful whispers. Certainly no glory. Their only reward was a purse of coin sticky with blood, and the knowledge that they would forever lurk in the footnotes of history, if anywhere at all. You step gingerly over a heap of something rank and unidentifiable, half sunk in the mire of the alley. The smell hits you, a stomach-churning mix of sewage and rot that briefly overpowers all other thoughts. You wrinkle your nose and push on, silently lamenting not only the foul odor, but the foul reality of your trade. At least tonight you're only slogging through the city's filth, not literally submerging yourself in it. Small mercies, you think with a dark chuckle under your breath. It could be worse. You've heard whispers of a killer who hid in a castle cesspit for hours, literally up to his neck in excrement, waiting to strike when his mark sat on the privy above. One unlucky duke met his end that way, stabbed up from below while attending to nature's call. The memory of that tale makes you shudder and smirk at the same time. Disgusting. Yes, but perfectly emblematic of how low this profession can go. No honor in a kill like that, just the stench and a story you'd never confess to anyone if you had a shred of pride left. Your eyes water from the stink as you continue along, and you tighten the scarf around your nose and mouth. The gentle scrape of steel hidden beneath your cloak reassures you slightly. At least the dagger at your side means you're not defenseless in this murky world of shadows. Still, that blade is a coward's weapon. Isn't it a knight has his shining sword and a code of chivalry you'd imagined it going smoothly, quick, clean, silent, just a slice and then silence. That was the fantasy. Anyway, the reality. It's messier, not with blood. No, though there's enough of that later, but with panic, with clumsy footing, with nerves that don't just flutter but stampede through your chest like a startled herd of oxen. You are not the blade in the dark. You are the winded peasant gasping behind the curtain, hoping your feet don't squeak when you shift your weight. It starts the moment you slip through that warped wooden door. You expect to find your mark alone. Maybe washing his hands in a basin. Maybe bent over papers by candlelight. Instead, you find yourself face to face with him as he turns two startled animals locking eyes, only one holding a weapon. Your fingers fumble. The dagger snags on your sleeve for a heartbeat. Both of you freeze. Then he moves. He's fast, far faster than you expected. All those nights spent pacing and whispering. Just one good strike didn't prepare you for a target who doesn't stand still. He lunges at you, grabs your wrist. You slam against a beam. Breath knocked from your lungs. The dagger clatters to the floor and skids away. You panic. He shouts, and for a sickening second, you think it's over, but luck crude. Stupid luck is your patron saint tonight. His boot lands on a loose floorboard. It splinters. He stumbles. You don't think you act, with the speed of a kicked dog. You grab the iron poker from the hearth and swing wildly. It connects. The man crumples with a grunt, twitching once before stilling. You drop the poker and stand trembling, gasping. Your hands are shaking. Your vision blurs. You don't feel victorious. You feel ill. There is no skill in what just happened. No artistry. No precision. It was chaos, fueled by fear and adrenaline. You manage to retrieve your dagger and wipe it clean on the edge of a curtain, the fabric stiff with soot. Your breath still comes in shallow gasps. So much for your grand entrance into this new world. You didn't look like a silent killer. You looked like a startled goat crashing through a stable door. It dawns on you then you're not special. You're not gifted. There's no hidden talent awakening in you. You were simply lucky. And next time. That might not be enough. You'd heard about professionals deadly, methodical, calm under pressure, but now, standing over a limp body with shaky knees, you understand just how far from that fantasy you are. Even the so-called experts had their missteps. The infamous Hashashin of Persia and Syria were whispered about with awe and fear. But their missions didn't always go as planned. One of their most high-profile targets, a man named Conrad of Montferrat, was attacked in broad daylight by two assassins disguised as monks. Conrad was no helpless victim. He managed to strike down the first attacker before the second fatally wounded him. Even fanatics willing to die for their mission could fail. And you're not even sure you're willing to stub your toe for a coin purse, as the silence thickens around you. You hear the pop and crackle of the fire and realize this job, this world. It's not about skill, it's about seizing an opening, catching someone unaware, lurking long enough for one tiny mistake, and pouncing like a feral cat. You're not a knight. You're not even a soldier. You're a scuttling thing in the dark, hoping no one notices until it's too late. You drag the body toward the hearth with awkward, jerky movements. You're not even sure why, maybe to make it look like an accident, as if someone tripped and fell. It's a feeble effort, and deep down you know it. But the panic in your chest needs a task, some illusion of control. You douse the lantern. Then, after one last glance at the still form, you slip out the door and disappear into the night. Heart racing. The cold hits you like a slap. You didn't notice it inside, but now the chill air feels like penance. You pull your cloak tighter and walk and walk. No clear direction, just away from the house, the street, the memory. Your hands still tremble. You flex them repeatedly, trying to push out the sensation, but they remember. Fingers remember panic long after the mind tries to forget. By the time you reach the edge of town, the eastern sky is beginning to glow a faint violet. Dawn is a cruel light. It reveals everything. And tonight you feel like a thing best left unseen. You duck behind a low stone wall and crouch, resting your back against it. breathing through the tight knot in your chest. Your first kill is behind you, and it was nothing like you thought it would be. You try to steady your thoughts. It's over, isn't it? You did it. That man is dead. You're alive. And soon, someone will place a coin purse into your hand, just like they promised. But the doubts crawl in anyway, curling through your mind like ivy through old brick. What if they don't pay? What if someone saw you? What if the man survived and comes after you? What if this was a test and you failed? There's no pride in what you've done, no satisfaction, only a growing emptiness. This isn't some noble crusade. It's a job, a miserable, dirty job that might kill you if you don't get better at it. You close your eyes, trying to slow your breathing, to calm the shakes. But the memory keeps looping behind your lids, his eyes widening, the poker swinging, the body falling. You remember the stories of heroes Arthur, Roland, El Cid. They had banners. They had causes. But then there were men like you. Men like the anonymous figure who hid in a privy for hours, waiting for King Edmund to relieve himself only to stab him from below. Or the woman in Lombardy who allegedly seduced and poisoned tyrants with honeyed wine. Their names are forgotten. Their deaths are footnotes. Their stories, if told at all, are whispered with revulsion rather than reverence. You are closer to them now than to any knight. You've crossed a threshold, and there's no going back. The shadows aren't just where you work anymore. They're where you live, where you belong. You pull your hood lower and stand. The sky is growing brighter. Time to move, time to fade. You slink back into the winding lanes before the morning crowds rise. You'd imagined it going smoothly quick, clean, silent. Just a slice and then silence. That was the fantasy. Anyway, the reality. It's messier. Not with blood. No, though there's enough of that later, but with panic, with clumsy footing, with nerves that don't just flutter but stampede through your chest like a startled herd of oxen. You are not the blade in the dark. You are the winded peasant gasping behind the curtain, hoping your feet don't squeak when you shift your weight. It starts the moment you slip through that warped wooden door. You expect to find your mark alone. Maybe washing his hands in a basin. Maybe bent over papers by candlelight. Instead, you find yourself face to face with him as he turns the two startled animals' locking eyes. Only one holding a weapon. Your fingers fumble. The dagger snags on your sleeve. For a heartbeat. Both of you freeze. Then he moves. He's fast. Far faster than you expected. All those nights spent pacing and whispering. Just one good strike didn't prepare you for a target who doesn't stand still. He lunges at you, grabs your wrist. You slam against a beam. Breath knocked from your lungs. The dagger clatters to the floor and skids away. You panic. He shouts, and for a sickening second, you think it's over, but luck crude. Stupid luck is your patron saint tonight. His boot lands on a loose floorboard. It splinters. He stumbles. You don't think you act. With the speed of a kicked dog, you grab the iron poker from the hearth and swing wildly. It connects. The man crumples with a grunt. Twitching once before stilling, you drop the poker and stand trembling, gasping. Your hands are shaking. Your vision blurs. You don't feel victorious. You feel ill. There is no skill in what just happened. No artistry. No precision. It was chaos, fueled by fear and adrenaline. You manage to retrieve your dagger and wipe it clean on the edge of a curtain. The fabric stiff with soot. Your breath still comes in shallow gasps. So much for your grand entrance into this new world. You didn't look like a silent killer. You looked like a startled goat crashing through a stable door. It dawns on you then you're not special. You're not gifted. There's no hidden talent awakening in you. You were simply lucky. And next time. That might not be enough. You'd heard about professionals deadly, methodical, calm under pressure, but now, standing over a limp body with shaky knees, you understand just how far from that fantasy you are. Even the so-called experts had their missteps. The infamous Hashashin of Persia and Syria were whispered about with awe and fear. But their missions didn't always go as planned. One of their most high-profile targets, a man named Conrad of Montferrat, was attacked in broad daylight by two assassins disguised as monks. Conrad was no helpless victim. He managed to strike down the first attacker before the second fatally wounded him. Even fanatics willing to die for their mission could fail. And you. You're not even sure you're willing to stub your toe for a coin purse. As the silence thickens around you, you hear the pop and crackle of the fire and realize this job, this world. It's not about skill. It's about seizing an opening, catching someone unaware, lurking long enough for one tiny mistake, and pouncing like a feral cat. You're not a knight. You're not even a soldier. You're a scuttling thing in the dark, hoping no one notices until it's too late. You drag the body toward the hearth with awkward, jerky movements. You're not even sure why, maybe to make it look like an accident, as if someone tripped and fell. It's a feeble effort. And deep down, you know it. But the panic in your chest needs a task, some illusion of control. You douse the lantern. Then, after one last glance at the still form, you slip out the door and disappear into the night, heart racing. The cold hits you like a slap. You didn't notice it inside, but now the chill air feels like penance. You pull your cloak tighter and walk, and walk. No clear direction, just away from the house, the street, the memory. Your hands still tremble. You flex them repeatedly, trying to push out the sensation, but they remember. Fingers remember panic long after the mind tries to forget. By the time you reach the edge of town, the eastern sky is beginning to glow a faint violet. Dawn is a cruel light. It reveals everything. And tonight you feel like a thing best left unseen. You duck behind a low stone wall and crouch, resting your back against it, breathing through the tight knot in your chest. Your first kill is behind you, and it was nothing like you thought it would be. You try to steady your thoughts. It's over. Isn't it? You did it. That man is dead. You're alive. And soon, someone will place a coin purse into your hand, just like they promised. But the doubts crawl in anyway, curling through your mind like ivy through old brick. What if they don't pay? What if someone saw you? What if the man survived and comes after you? What if this was a test and you failed? There's no pride in what you've done, no satisfaction, only a growing emptiness. This isn't some noble crusade. It's a job, a miserable, dirty job that might kill you if you don't get better at it. You close your eyes, trying to slow your breathing, to calm the shakes, but the memory keeps looping behind your lids, his eyes widening, the poker swinging, the body falling. You remember the stories of heroes Arthur, Roland, El Cid. They had banners. They had causes. But then there were men like you. Men like You wait in the alley for over an hour. The man said he'd be here by midnight, but the bells have struck twice since then. And still, no footsteps, no rustle of cloak, no jingle of a coin pouch in the dark. Just the quiet murmur of wind curling between shuttered windows and the distant bark of a sleepless dog. Your legs ache from crouching. Your back is stiff, and the damp brick you're leaning against is cold enough to leach the warmth from your bones. Still, you wait, because you've done your part. You delivered. The man is dead, slumped against the barrels behind the cooper's shop. His breath stilled. His coin now in someone else's hands. All that's left is your payment. And yet, the minutes stretch. The shadows grow longer, then thinner. As moonlight shifts, you start to understand that something's wrong, not in a sharp, alarming way, but in that slow, creeping unease that settles into your stomach like spoiled wine. He's not coming. You tell yourself he must have been delayed. Maybe he was seen. Maybe the watch was out. Maybe he decided not to risk the rendezvous. You whisper excuses into the dark, trying to soothe the growing certainty scratching at the back of your mind. He's not coming, and there will be no pay. You sit on a crate, feeling the fatigue settle in like wet sand. Your shoulders slump. The night that began with careful plotting now ends in silence and disappointment. You clench your jaw and try to swallow your rage, but it's bitter and jagged, and it doesn't go down easy. You think back to what he said when he hired you quick work, clean. I'll pay at the usual spot. That's all. No names, no terms, no witnesses. He handed you a note, described the target, and vanished into the tavern crowd. At the time, it felt mysterious, professional. Now, it feels stupid, childish. You trusted a whisper in the dark with your life, and surprise it lied. There's no guild protecting you, no ledger to cite, no promise of justice. Your profession comes without paperwork. The whole arrangement runs on faith and fear and the unspoken code of shadows. But codes don't feed you. Coins do. And tonight, you have none. You remember an old tale you once heard over a cracked mug of watered-down wine. 4 knights rode into Canterbury one winter's night in 1170. They entered the cathedral, swords in hand, and found the archbishop himself, Thomas Becket. The knights struck him down in the sacred space, blood spattering stone and sanctuary alike. Their reward, not praise, not wealth, not even safety. The church turned on them. The Pope excommunicated them. They fled into exile and spent years atoning in far-off lands, cloaked not in honor but in guilt. That story sticks with you now, because if those killers' knights with titles, armor, and purpose could be abandoned, what hope do you have? A cold breeze whistles down the alley and you shiver. You dig your hands into your cloak and rise, legs protesting. You won't be paid. And there's nothing to be done. You won't chase him down, won't knock on doors or call out in the street. That would draw attention, and assassins don't seek attention. They vanish. But something inside you shifts. A seed of bitterness roots itself in your gut. You did what was asked. You risked your life. And now, all you have is another empty stomach and blood you can't scrub from your hands. You slip into the street and disappear down a side lane, already planning your next step. Maybe someone else has work. Maybe someone will pay. Or maybe you'll have to make an example, though, that's dangerous. Vengeance is a luxury in your line of work. Still, you've heard of men who made names for themselves by punishing those who crossed them. It's said one assassin, after being cheated, found his employer at a noble banquet and slipped crushed glass into his wine. The man bled for hours, screaming. No one knew why. No one asked. But after that, payments arrived on time. You're not sure you're ready for that kind of message yet, but it simmers at the back of your mind. For now, you find a quiet doorway, curl up against the stone, and let your eyes close. It's a dangerous thing, sleeping outside in this city, but what's safer returning to your loft? If the landlady hasn't locked you out for unpaid rent, sitting up until dawn, twitching at every sound. No, you need the rest, even if it's just for an hour, as sleep claims you. Your dreams twist. You see coins fall through your fingers, one by one. They don't hit the ground. They vanish in midair, like smoke, and behind you, always just out of reach. A man's voice laughs, a familiar voice, the one who promised you gold and gave you nothing. You wake before dawn, throat dry, eyes gritty. You rise stiffly and begin walking. The city is still asleep. That's your favorite time, the world on pause. Before people wake and remember how to be cruel again. You find the stable woman and offer her your boots in exchange for another night's shelter. She examines them, shrugs, and nods. She's seen worse. You pad upstairs barefoot and lie on the straw pallet. Your feet cold, your pride colder. This job is teaching you quickly. Never trust the promise of payment. Never believe that those who hire you are braver or better than you. They just have cleaner hands and more people to do their dirty work. You're not a partner. You're a tool, a knife, disposable, replaceable. You used to think that finishing the job was the hard part, but now you know better. Sometimes, the hardest part is waiting in the dark for a coin pouch that never comes. Air feels like penance. You pull your cloak tighter and walk and walk. No clear direction, just away from the house, the street, the memory. Your hands still tremble. You flex them repeatedly, trying to push out the sensation, but they remember. Fingers remember panic long after the mind tries to forget. By the time you reach the edge of town, you spot him across the square, just as the market stalls are being packed up for the day. He's not wearing the same cloak as before, clever. But his walk is the same. That proud tilt of the shoulders like he owns every cobblestone underfoot. The man who hired you 2 jobs ago, the one who paid on time, smiled politely, asked for another favor, and now he pretends he doesn't know you. He looks past you like you're mist in the evening sun. It's not that you expected warmth, but something about the blankness in his eyes as they glide over yours. It unsettles you. It's not ignorance, it's calculation. He sees you. He just doesn't want you to know he does. You step back into a doorway, shadows curling around you like an old cloak. You don't follow him, not yet. You watch. He crosses to a vendor and exchanges coin for a length of silk. Smiles at something the vendor says, then walks on, a nobleman's ease, the kind of man who never worries if his meal will arrive, or if someone's watching him from across a square, or if the knife he paid for will one day be turned on him. Your stomach churns. The job you did for him was quick a clerk, a witness, someone who knew too much. You were careful, efficient, paid in full, for once. But now he walks like a man unburdened, like someone who's already checked a box, who's closed a loop, like someone who tied off a loose end. And you were the loose end. You follow at a distance, quiet as breath. Not because you plan to strike, but because you need to be sure. Because if he's moving against you, you want to know before the blade sinks in. You've learned, painfully, that betrayal is not the exception in your profession. It's the cost of doing business. It happens more often than you'd like to believe. An assassin gets too visible, too skilled, too inconvenient. Or maybe they just live too long. And someone somewhere says, they know too much. That's all it takes. One whispered doubt, and suddenly you're the target. You remember an old tale passed among your kind, a ruthless Italian duke who had a loyal henchman, his most trusted killer. The man did everything asked of him, spying, poisoning, eliminating enemies in the dark. But one day, the Duke decided loyalty wasn't enough. He feared exposure, or maybe the killer just knew too many names. So the Duke hosted a feast in his honor, served him wine, and had him strangled before the dessert was cleared. They displayed the body in the town square the next morning, warning carved into his chest. No witnesses, no questions, just a message. No one is safe. You used to think that kind of story was exaggerated. Now, you're not so sure. You trail your former employer through a maze of alleys and side streets. He doesn't notice, or maybe he pretends not to. That makes it worse. He passes through an arched gate and vanishes into a manor house you could never dream of entering. Guards stand watch. Thick wooden doors close behind him, and you're left outside, in the cold, with nothing but the creeping certainty that your days are numbered. You could run, pack your things, and disappear into another city. Change your name, shave your beard, become someone else. But you've done that before, and again, and again. The truth is, no matter where you go, you'll always be one step away from a whisper, one dead man away from being hunted, back in your rented loft. You light a candle and lay out your few belongings: a cracked mirror, a belt with a hidden pocket, 2 knives, 1 chipped, a pouch with a few coins, a spare tunic, that's your life, neatly folded into shadows. You sit and think about the job, about the man in the square, about the moment you let yourself believe he might be different, reasonable, honest. A soft knock at your door freezes you, just once, then silence. You reach for the blade without thinking. Hold your breath. Listen. Nothing. You pad across the floor on bare feet and press your back to the wall beside the door. Slowly, you open it a crack. No one, but tucked into the door frame is a slip of parchment, curled at the edge. No words, just a red wax seal. Broken, a message, perhaps, or a warning, or a mistake. You crumple it and toss it into the dying fire. He's made his move, or he will soon, and you. You don't know if you'll run, strike first, or simply vanish. But you know the rules now. If the employer looks at you too long, if his smile lingers, if the coin feels too heavy, he's already decided. You're already marked. This is the curse of your profession. You are not an ally. You are not a partner. You are a convenience, a silence for hire. And the moment your silence becomes uncertain, they won't hesitate, not out of cruelty, just efficiency. One of their most high-profile targets. A man named Conrad of Montferrat was attacked in broad daylight by two assassins disguised as monks. Conrad was no helpless victim. He managed to strike down the first attacker before the second fatally wounded him. Each eye for their mission could fail. And you're not even sure you're willing to stub your toe for a coin purse. As the silence thickens around you, you hear the pop and crackle of the fire and realize this job, this world. It's not about skill. It's about seizing an opening, lurking long enough for one tiny mistake, and pouncing like a feral cat. You're not even a soldier. You're a scuttling thing in the dark, hoping no one notices until it's too late. You thought the danger ended when the deed was done, but in truth, that's when it begins, long after the blood dries and the client slips away with their problem solved. You remain alive, breathing, dangerous, too dangerous. Perhaps you know the names, you know the faces, you know the secrets whispered behind closed doors, and that makes you a threat, not just to one man, but to everyone. So now, you run, not in the wild, flailing sense of escape, but in the quiet, daily rhythm of a hunted animal. You keep your bag packed. You sleep with your boots on. You wake at the slightest creak in the floorboards or snap of a twig beyond the shuttered window. You change inns every 3 nights. Sometimes, even mid-supper. There's no reason to linger, no comfort to grow used to, no face you trust enough to greet twice. This is the life they don't talk about when they speak of assassins. They imagine cloaks and codes, secret passages and silent daggers. They don't speak of the paranoia, the hunger, the constant suspicion that every friendly nod is a trap, that every door you open might have a blade behind it. And they certainly don't speak of what it does to your mind. You keep to the back roads now, the forests, the riverbanks, the old shepherd trails no one remembers. It's quiet there, safer. You can go days without seeing another soul, but even the solitude gnaws at you. Silence is only comforting when you choose it, when it's forced upon you. It becomes a kind of prison. You pass a village once where people glance up from their bread and ale as you walk through. The blacksmith stiffens. A woman draws her child close. You haven't said a word, haven't shown your blade, but something in you, your posture, your eyes marks you. They can smell it on you now, like smoke on an arsonist's cloak. You don't belong, you're not a traveler, you're a shadow in human skin. And they know, even if they don't know exactly why. The laws don't protect you. In fact, they're written for your end. It doesn't matter why you did it, whether it was for gold, for blackmail, even for justice. The moment your blade enters flesh, you become an outlaw. There's no trial, no defense. If they catch you, they'll string you up by dawn, if you're lucky. One name keeps returning to your thoughts, Otto of Wittelsbach. You heard his story in a smoky tavern from a traveling monk. Otto killed a king, stabbed Philip of Swabia at a wedding. A wedding. Can you imagine that lace and flowers and music, and then steel? He struck the monarch down and fled. He ran for a year, changed his name, disguised himself. But they found him, and they didn't just execute him, they made a show of it. Beheaded him in the market square, threw his severed head into the river, and let the crows do the rest. You wonder sometimes if Otto thought it was worth it. You doubt it. A branch snaps in the woods behind you. You spin, hand already at your side. But it's only a deer. darting into the underbrush. Still, your pulse doesn't slow for minutes. You crouch low, listening to the wind whisper through the leaves, to the rustle of unseen animals in the brush. You feel hunted. Because you are, your former client might have marked you. Your victim's family might have learned your face. Or perhaps the guard captain you bribed spoke too freely after a few mugs. It doesn't take much. A word in the wrong ear. And suddenly your name is being muttered in the barracks. Then on wanted posters. Then by bounty hunters who sharpen their knives while dreaming of reward. You've already seen your own likeness sketched once crudely. On parchment pinned to a tree, it wasn't exact, but close enough. The nose, the eyes. It was you. You tore it down and burned it, hands shaking, even when you're still. You feel chased. There's no such thing as rest anymore, only pauses between sprints. Sometimes you think of going to sea, joining a crew, becoming someone else entirely. There's an appeal to that, to the anonymity of a deckhand, scrubbing barnacles off the hull, vanishing into salt spray and storms. But even there, you'd be looking over your shoulder, because your crime isn't just in what you've done, it's in who you've become. You are a witness now, a liability, a loose thread in the garment of someone else's secret, and people like you don't get to walk away clean. There's a saying among mercenaries, the blade that's hired today is buried tomorrow. You used to laugh at it. Now, it keeps you awake at night. You camp in the ruins of an old tower tonight, the walls moss-covered and broken. You tuck yourself beneath a crumbled arch, shielded from the wind, and try to sleep. But every crackle of leaves, every shift of wind makes you jolt upright. You draw your dagger halfway, then sheathe it again, over and over, a twitching rhythm of fear. And in the distance, so faint it might be imagined, you hear a dog barking. You tell yourself it's nothing, just a farmer's hound, just the wind. But you don't sleep, because deep down, you know when you kill in secret, the price isn't just the risk of being caught. It's the certainty of being hunted. Empty stomach and blood you can't scrub from your hand into the street and disappear down a side lane, already planning your next step. Maybe someone else has work. Or you stop trusting people somewhere along the road to Varnamil. It's not a single moment. Not one grand betrayal with poison in your cup or a dagger between your ribs. It's slower than that. More like rot setting into old wood quiet. Unseen. Until everything starts to creak underfoot. At first, you still nodded at strangers, said thanks to innkeepers, shared a bench by the fire, and offered a coin for stories. But the longer you lived in the shadows, the more dangerous that kindness became. Because the man smiling back might be listening a little too closely, and the woman pouring your ale might have been paid extra to ask about the traveler with the faded green cloak. So, you stopped. Now. Your eyes scan every face in a room the moment you enter. You sit with your back to the wall. Near the door, you count exits. You listen for the creak of unfamiliar boots on the floor above. Every sip of wine is taken with caution. Every bed you sleep in. You check for trap doors or loose floorboards. Paranoia, they'd call it, but paranoia keeps you alive. You stay in a tavern near the border tonight, small, smoky, quiet, just a few locals nursing mugs by the hearth. The innkeeper eyes you warily. You give a false name and pay in coin that's been rubbed nearly smooth. When she asks where you're from, You offer a vague shrug and say something about river trade. She doesn't press, but you see her whisper to the stable boy as you head upstairs. You don't sleep in the bed. You sleep beneath it, somewhere. You heard that King James of Scotland was killed by his own kin, that his uncle pretended loyalty, then led the very men who murdered him in the middle of the night. A king, a crowned, guarded man, and even he wasn't safe from betrayal. So, what hope do you have the next morning? You slip away before sunrise, through the woods, across a shallow creek. You walk until your boots are caked in mud, and the tavern is just another memory. You don't know if the stable boy told someone. You don't know if the innkeeper had anything to gain, but it doesn't matter. You never go back. There was a time you missed companionship, a warm voice, shared food, laughter, but that desire has hollowed out. Now, even the idea of it makes your skin crawl. You've seen too many smiles vanish the moment you turn your back, heard too many footsteps that stopped the moment you stopped. Once, you tried to reach out. A woman selling herbs on the roadside offered you a fig and asked if you were traveling alone. Her voice was kind, her eyes steady. For a moment, you almost told her the truth, not the whole story. Of course, but a piece, something human. You asked her name. She paused, smiled, said she had none worth remembering. That night, someone tried your door with a key that didn't belong to you. You still don't know if it was her. There's a gnawing edge to this life, one that chews at your sense of self. Who are you? Really? If you trust no one, if every human interaction is filtered through suspicion, weighed against risk, you start to forget what it feels like to speak plainly, to breathe without listening first. You see a child once, playing near a fountain in a bustling village square. He runs barefoot, laughing, hands dripping from the cold water. And, for a moment, it stuns you, the openness of it, the safety, the total lack of fear. He's never had to look over his shoulder, never had to judge a stranger by the tilt of their head or the weight of their gaze. His world is still soft. Yours is made of knives. You step away before his mother notices you watching, before she feels that unspoken tension and pulls him close. Later that week, you buy a cloak from a traveling merchant, a new color, something unremarkable. The merchant jokes about it being perfect for disappearing. You offer a tight smile, pay in exact coin. No haggling. He keeps his eyes on your back as you walk away. You burn the old cloak that night, not because it's torn, not because it's dirty, but because it's remembered. There are rules to this life now, routines. You change towns, change voices, learn the local dialects. Sometimes you pretend to limp, or to be deaf. You avoid crowds, avoid churches, avoid taverns with too many men in cloaks like yours. But even then, the danger seeps through. You once stayed with a farmer and his wife, far from the roads. They didn't ask questions, gave you bread, a blanket. You mended their fence, helped chop wood for a moment. It felt real, simple, safe. Then you found the scrap of parchment behind the hearth, a sketch of your face, crude, faded, but unmistakable. You left before dusk, took nothing, left nothing, not even a footprint. You wonder if they knew, if they'd been promised a reward, or if they simply kept the paper. Curious about the man with the tired eyes who said little and worked hard. You tell yourself it doesn't matter. But in truth, it always matters. Every face, every fire, every bed. You're always watching, always weighing, because out here, trust is just another word for a slow death. You keep walking. Manor house you could never dream of entering. Guards stand watch. Thick wooden doors close behind him, and you're left outside, in the cold, with nothing but the creeping certainty that your days are numbered. You could run, pack your things, and disappear into another city. Change your name, shave your beard. You don't believe in skill anymore. Not really. Oh, you have instincts now, habits, reflexes. You know how to move silently across gravel, how to time your steps with the ringing of bells, how to smile just enough to avoid suspicion, but not enough to be remembered. These are useful, but they are not why you're still alive. No, you're alive because of timing. Coincidence, dumb. Ridiculous luck. You know it deep in your bones. Like the time you stepped out of an inn just as a group of watchmen kicked open the door. You'd been sitting by the fire seconds before, chewing on a heel of bread. They were looking for someone. A killer in green. You were wearing green. You walked out because the bread was stale. That's it. That's why you're breathing now. It's laughable. You've read stories when you had time to read about masters of stealth. Trained from youth, able to blend into shadows, scale walls, vanish in crowds, but most of them fiction. Or flattering lies passed around to make someone feel important. Real assassins aren't magicians. They're survivors, opportunists, rats in the pantry of history, always one trap away from extinction. You once heard about King James of Scotland. His end was like something out of a grim comedy. There was a plot against his life. And when the killers came, the king tried to escape through a sewer tunnel beneath his chambers. A clever plan. A way out. Except he'd had the tunnel sealed up a year earlier. Why? Because tennis balls kept getting lost down there. That's not legend. That's the truth. A king undone by tennis balls. And now, every time you escape a tight corner, every time you catch a carriage by the last rung or duck into a shed seconds before riders thunder past, you think it wasn't skill. It was timing. It was weather. It was that random goat in the alley that blocked a pursuer. It was that drunken guard who needed to vomit instead of patrol. It was fortune, not finesse. You've built your life on cracks in fate. You live in the gaps between someone else's certainty and someone else's mistake. The closer you get to danger, the more you see it, the best killers aren't always the sharpest blades. They're the luckiest. You don't train anymore. What would be the point? How do you train for wind direction? For moonlight glinting off your blade at the wrong time? For a target deciding randomly, fatefully to turn around? You just move. You stay light. You observe. You hope. One time, you hid in a cart of straw. Classic. Predictable. You cursed yourself even as you climbed in. But the cart belonged to a baker who was having an affair with a tax collector's wife. And that scandal exploded the very night you hitched a ride. The guards were too busy brawling in the tavern to inspect carts. That wasn't your plan. That was fate. Playing a tune you just happened to dance to. You once nearly died because your boots squeaked. Not loudly. Just enough. You were trailing a target through a tiled corridor, some small noble with debts and secrets, and the polished floor made your boots betray you. He turned. You froze. You pretended to be a servant. He squinted, and then, from the hall beyond, a dog barked, a loud, obnoxious little terrier. The noble turned to shout. You vanished through the servants' passage, saved by a dog with poor manners. You keep a tally of those moments now. In your head, you don't count kills anymore. You count escapes. Times luck leaned your way. Times you could have died, should have died, and didn't. The number's unsettling. You find yourself murmuring quiet thanks to things that don't have names. Not gods, not saints, just chance, coincidence. Maybe the spirit of misplaced tennis balls. Tonight, you huddle under an overturned wagon as rain drums above. You didn't mean to be here. You meant to be in the forest, past the ridge, but a wrong turn and a flooded trail led you here. You found the wagon, abandoned, and ducked beneath it, and from there, in the distance, you heard hooves, voices, men calling your name, your real name, in the dark. You don't know who they are, or how they knew, but if you'd stayed on your path, they would have found you. So, now, you're wet, cold, cramped, but alive. You mutter a quiet prayer not to a god, but to timing. You think of all the people who didn't get that luck, the ones whose boots squeaked too loud, whose tunnels were sealed, who bet on silence when they should have bet on dogs. You think of Otto, of James, of the unnamed killers who didn't make it out of the alley. You think, perhaps, that your time is coming. The scales always balance. Luck runs out, but not tonight. Tonight. You shift your weight beneath the wagon, wrap your cloak tighter, and close your eyes with the rhythm of the rain tapping a lullaby against old wood. Still breathing. Still here. He ran for a year, changed his name, disguised himself, but they found him. And they didn't just execute him, they made a show of it. Beheaded him in the market square, threw his severed head into the river, and let the crows do the rest. You wonder sometimes if Otto thought it was well quiet. You're worth it. You doubt it. A branch snaps in the woods behind you. You spin, hand already at your... But it's only a deer, darting into the underbrush. Still, your pulse doesn't slow for minutes. You crouch low you wake to silence, not the peaceful kind, the kind that wraps too tightly around your ears, makes your skin itch, the kind that reminds you no one is coming. You've traveled for weeks now, moving from hamlet to hamlet, trading odd jobs and fake names for shelter. You sleep in haylofts, under carts, in the ruins of old watchtowers. You haven't spoken to someone who knows your face in months. You haven't spoken your real name in longer. And somewhere along the way, the fantasy crumbled. You used to imagine, especially in the early days, that there might be a brotherhood, a hidden network, a circle of cloaked figures who spoke in code and moved through the world like smoke. A place where your name would earn a nod, where someone might say, "You're one of us. We've been waiting." You liked to imagine that, maybe. Just maybe. You weren't alone, but you are. There is no creed, no guild, no whispered passwords behind false walls, just you and the dirt under your boots. You thought once about seeking out the East, where legends speak of ninja silent warriors who vanished into the wind, left no prints, struck with precision, and disappeared. But even they, if they ever existed as the stories say, worked alone. One man, one blade, one target. When it went wrong, no one came to help. No one ever does. You learned that lesson in the village of Lareth. The job was simple. A merchant's rival, a quick jab in the market crowd. You did it cleanly, slipped away before the man even fell. But someone saw. A boy, 9, maybe 10, big eyes, quiet feet. You hesitated just for a moment, and that hesitation cost you. By sundown, they were searching. Doors were barred, torches lit. The boy's description spread like fire. A limp in the right leg, they said. A scratch on the cheek. Green cloak, smelled of mint. You don't even like mint. You fled to the woods. Breath ragged. Legs aching. Slept in a tree. One eye open. The next morning, you listened from the edge of the village as a woman was beaten. She ran the apothecary. She had mint in her shop. They thought she helped you. She hadn't. She didn't even know you. But they needed someone to blame. And so they blamed her. You wanted to go back, to say something, do something. But what could you say? I'm sorry, it should have been me. So you walked, and you didn't look back that night. Camped by a dry creek bed. You stared up at the stars and whispered the question you hadn't dared ask before. Is there anyone else? The silence that answered was louder than any scream. You tried, once, to find someone like you. A man in a northern port claimed to know of others killers who worked in tandem, shared tools, jobs, names. He offered an introduction, for a fee. You paid, waited, 2 nights, then 3. He vanished. So did your coin. And that, too. Was a lesson? Now, you no longer ask, no longer hope. You are not a part of something larger. You are not a piece in a noble game. You are a tool, a weapon left in the rain, tonight. The wind howls through the abandoned mill you've taken shelter in. You huddle in the shadows, crickets chirping all around you, loud, restless. You smile, faintly. You once heard of an assassin who released a box of crickets during a job. Let them loose in a corridor just before striking. The noise masked his steps. The distraction worked. He got away. The tale is probably nonsense. But you like it. Because tonight, as you lie in the dark with your blanket pulled to your chin and your blade close at hand, the crickets are your only company. They don't ask questions, don't judge, don't betray. They just sing. You close your eyes and listen. The sound is constant, familiar, in their song. You imagine what a brotherhood might sound like. Not grand speeches or secret oaths, just presence, just someone near you in the dark. But there's no one. There never was. And in the stillness that follows, as the wind sighs through the boards and the moon slips behind clouds, you understand you were always alone. You were just pretending not to be. Companionship, a warm voice, shared food, laughter, but that desire has hollowed out. Now, even the idea of it makes your skin crawl. You've seen too many smiles vanish the moment you turn your back. Heard too many footsteps that stopped the moment you stopped. Once, you tried to reach out. A woman selling herbs on the roadside offered you a fig and asked if you were traveling alone. Her voice was kind, her eyes steady. For a moment, you almost told her the truth, not the whole story. Of course, but a piece, something human. You asked her name. She paused, smiled, said she had none worth remembering. That night, someone tried your door with the key that didn't belong to you. You still don't know if it was her. There's a gnawing edge to this life, one that chews at your sense of self. Who are you? You try not to remember their faces, But memory doesn't care about effort. It slips in when your guard is down, when the fire dies low, when sleep softens the edges of your mind, when the world grows quiet enough for the past to speak. And the past speaks often. You see them when your eyes close, not always clearly. Sometimes it's just the shape of a jawline, a way a hand twitched at the last second, a sound that wasn't quite a word. You tell yourself they were bad people, that they had it coming, that you were just a tool, a hired hand, a means to someone else's end. But guilt isn't logical. It doesn't listen to reason. It doesn't care about coin or cause. It comes anyway, like rain through a roof you thought was patched. Tonight. It's the merchant from the border town, the one with the crooked nose and soft hands. You remember how he dropped the ledger he was holding when he saw you. Remember how he whispered something that might have been a name or a plea. You don't know. You never asked. He lies there again now, in your mind, as clear as if it happened yesterday. The lantern swinging overhead, the wet thud, the silence. You stare at the ceiling of the barn you've taken shelter in and feel the weight of him settle onto your chest. You try to think of something else, anything else. You remember a tale told by a wandering friar, a strange man, half holy, half mad. He spoke of one of the knights who killed Thomas Becket. Said the man spent the rest of his life building churches, one after another, hammering stone, raising arches, atonement through architecture. He died with raw hands and a hollow look in his eyes. You used to laugh at that, thought it was theater, a neat ending to a messy tale. You don't laugh anymore. You understand now. You found yourself muttering apologies when no one's around, not loudly, just soft enough to slip past your lips without you noticing. You wake sometimes with your hand over your heart, as if guarding it from something unseen. You never used to dream. Not really. Now, the dreams come like a tide. Sometimes it's the ones you killed. Sometimes it's you, being chased, being caught, being judged, a rope pulled taut, a knife turned inward. You always wake before the end, heart pounding, breath short. You tried to drown it once, took coin from a job and spent it all on drink. Ale, then wine, then something stronger, black and bitter and burning. You drank until you couldn't see straight, slept in a ditch, woke up with blood on your shirt and no memory of why. The guilt was still there, waiting. So now you stay sober. Most nights. You think maybe this is the real punishment. Not the fear, not the running, not the bruises or hunger or cold. It's this, the remembering. You saw a child once in a village square laughing, spinning, arms outstretched like wings. And just for a moment, a flicker he looked like someone you'd killed. The same eyes, the same lopsided smile. Your chest went hollow. You left that village within the hour. Didn't even eat. You wonder if this is why so many killers end badly. Not because they're caught, but because they can't carry the weight. The job strips you down. First, your name, then your friends, then your home, but the memories, those stay. They cling. They rot. You become a walking archive of every mistake you made in silence. There are nights when you think about throwing down your blade, walking into a town square, letting them take you, just ending it. But then you remember the woman in the alley, the one who cried when you spared her, the one who ran. You still don't know why you didn't do it, but you didn't. And that sliver of mercy tiny, almost invisible, is the only thing you let yourself hold on to. It's not redemption. It's not even hope. But it's something. Tonight, the fire crackles low. You sit beside it, wool blanket over your shoulders, hands clasped in front of you like a prayer you never learned how to say. Outside, the wind moves through the trees like the whisper of old names. You don't speak back, but you listen. And in that listening, there's something quieter than guilt. Not peace, not yet, but the beginning of stillness. Comedy. There was a plot against his life, and when the killers came, the king tried to escape through a sewer tunnel beneath his chambers. A clever plan. A way out. Except he'd had the tunnel sealed up a year earlier. Because tennis balls kept getting lost down there. That's not legend. That's the truth. A king. A king undone by tennis balls. And now, every time you escape a tight corner, every time you catch a carriage by the last rung or duck into a shed, seconds before riders thunder past, you think it wasn't skill. It was timing. It was weather. It was that random goat in the alley that blocked a pursuer. It was that drunken guard who needed to vomit instead of patrol. It was fortune, not finesse. You've built your life on cracks in fate. You live in the gaps between someone else's certainty and someone else's mistake. The pain comes first in your knees, then your hands, then your back. You're not old, not really, but your body carries years like stones in a sack accumulated. Silent. Until one day the weight makes you stumble. The aches stay longer now. The bruises bloom darker. Your reflexes, once sharp as frostbite, now hesitate just long enough for you to notice. You don't say it out loud, but you feel it you're wearing thin. Your knife still moves fast enough when it counts, but barely. The days after a job now pass in a fog of soreness, of stiff fingers and deep, aching fatigue that no sleep seems to erase. You never expected to get old. You certainly didn't plan for it. People like you don't get to retire. There's no cozy cottage at the edge of a forest, no garden, no dog dozing by the hearth. There's only one way out of this life, and it rarely comes gently. Still, you used to tell yourself a story, that maybe one day you'd finish enough jobs to buy passage on a ship. Sail somewhere warm, somewhere anonymous. Let the past dissolve into salt spray and sun. Maybe take up fishing. Maybe disappear into the smell of citrus and clean linen, far from the cold streets and dirty coins. But now, your hands shake when you grip a line. Your left ankle stiffens after every long walk. You're not sure you could hold a net, let alone cast it. The fantasy wilts with every passing day. So, you keep moving. You work smaller jobs now, shorter blades, closer targets. You say it's strategy quieter this way, but really, you know your limits. Climbing rooftops isn't as easy as it once was. Crouching for hours sends your legs into numbness. Once, you leapt from a ledge to cut off a mark's escape and twisted your knee so badly you limped for a week. You told yourself it was nothing, but it wasn't. There are no medals for long service in your world. No one pins a brooch to your chest and says, "You made it." Instead, you vanish slowly, quietly. Fewer jobs come. Names stop being whispered. Employers move on to younger blades with cleaner slates and quicker feet. And still, you survive. You hear stories. You always hear stories. like Duke John the Fearless, orchestrated murders from his throne, drowned his enemies in silence, thought himself untouchable, until he wasn't. They say he rode out for a peace meeting, confident, unarmed, smiling, and he left with an axe in his face. There is no such thing as safety, only the illusion of it. Even those who once ordered death eventually meet it, often in the same way they dealt it. You think about that sometimes. Late at night, the cycle, the wheel turning. All those years spent ensuring someone else's secret stayed buried, and now you're the one hoping no one turns over the next stone. Once, while hiding in the rafters of a chapel, you saw an old man confessing. His voice cracked as he spoke, trembling under the weight of whatever sins he carried. You didn't hear the words, but you saw his hands clasped together, knuckles white. You saw the tears. You remember thinking, I wonder if he did what I have done. Then the priest leaned close and smiled, offered forgiveness, a clean slate, and you felt nothing. No urge to confess, no expectation of mercy, just a strange emptiness, like the echo of a bell long after it stopped ringing. Because you know the truth. Confession doesn't undo what's done. It doesn't wash blood from the floor. It doesn't heal broken ribs or wake the men who never got a last word. You sit now by a cold stream, washing your hands out of habit more than need. The water is icy, biting at your skin. You study your reflection, hollowed cheeks, hair turning gray at the edges, the beginnings of a limp you no longer bother hiding. You are not the phantom you once were. You are not forgotten. Not yet, but close. You once overheard a guard joking about a killer from years back. Still out there, he said, laughing. Probably just a ghost now. He didn't know he was talking about you. You let the water run off your hands and watch it swirl downstream. You wonder who will be the last person to speak your name. You rise slowly. Wrap your cloak tighter around your shoulders. You've learned how to move through this world like mist light. Unnoticed. Forgotten. But the mist is thinning, and the sun is rising. Where legends speak of ninja silent warriors who vanished into the wind, left no prints, struck with precision and disappeared. But even they, if they ever existed as the stories say, worked alone. One man, one blade, one target. When it went wrong, no one came to help. No one ever does. You learned that lesson in the village of Lareth. The job was simple. A merchant's rival. A quick jab in the market crowd. You did it cleanly. Slipped away before the man even fell. But someone saw. A boy. 9. Maybe 10. Big eyes. Quiet feet. You hesitated just for a moment. And that hesitation cost you. By sundown. They were searching. Doors were barred. Torches lit. The boy's description spread like fire. A limp in the right leg, they said. A scratch on the cheek. Green cloak, smelled of mint. You don't even like mint. You fled to the woods. Breath ragged. Legs aching. Slept in a tree. The room smells of candle wax and something faintly metallic. You knew the moment you stepped inside that something was wrong. The silence was too complete. The fire too perfectly banked, the wine too generously poured. But you were tired. So tired. The job was supposed to be simple. A meeting, a client with coin, a warm place to rest, maybe food, maybe even thanks, though you'd never ask for it. You followed the messenger because his eyes were dull, his story rehearsed, his fear genuine. It felt real. It always does. You sit now in the center of the room, watching the shadows shift along the walls. You haven't touched the wine, haven't unbuckled your cloak. You can't hear footsteps, but that means nothing. The smart ones wait. They've learned patience from people like you. You scan the walls. A painting hangs slightly crooked. The stonework behind the hearth is uneven. One brick, just one, is darker than the rest. You're counting exits in your head, planning routes through the narrow hallways, wondering how quickly the floorboards behind you might give way. And still, you stay seated. Not because you're frozen, but because you know it doesn't matter. The trap is already sprung. You think back to a story told in whispers, one passed around campfires and dark taverns. A king, curious and cruel, built a statue in his hall, a beautiful thing, polished and hollow. One evening, as he passed it, he reached out, admiring its craftsmanship. The statue moved. It fired a dozen hidden bolts. The king fell, pierced and wide-eyed, killed by his own curiosity. The mechanism was ancient, clever, silent. They say the man who designed it was never seen again. You remember laughing when you first heard that tale. Not because it was funny, but because you knew it was possible. You'd seen worse. You'd been near worse. And now, you wonder if this room is your statue. The door creaks. You rise slowly, hand at your belt, fingers brushing the hilt of your blade. 3 men enter. Not soldiers, not guards, just men with tired eyes and steady hands. The kind of hands that have done this before. You don't speak. Neither do they. One glances to the fireplace. That's when you notice the glint of wire, the soft, hair-thin thread running along the floorboards, up the leg of the chair, through the wall. Clever. They were waiting to see if you'd move first. You smile. Just barely. It's not amusement. It's resignation. Admiration. Perhaps you taught them too well. You draw your blade not because you think you'll win, but because you were always going to. The fight is quick. You're faster than they expected, but not fast enough. A chair crashes. A candle is knocked over. The scent of burning wax thickens. One man falls. Another bleeds. But the third he lands the strike. It's not dramatic. Not even painful at first. Just a pressure. A heat. You stumble. Sit back in the chair. Exhale. He watches you, waiting. You wonder if they'll bury you, if your name will be written in some book, if the man who ordered this is watching from behind a curtain, sipping wine you didn't drink. You close your eyes, not out of fear, but because you're tired. And finally, still, you think about the first time, that muddy alley, that panicked heartbeat, the man who fell and the coins you never got. It feels like a different life. Maybe it was. The room fades, the candle sputters, and somewhere, in the distance, a cricket sings. Just the shape of a jawline, solid. A hand twitched at the last second. A sound that wasn't quite a word. You tell yourself they were bad people, that they had laws don't protect you coming, that you were just a tool, a hired hand, a means to someone else. But guilt isn't logical. It doesn't lead to this one. Listen to reason. It doesn't care about coin or cause. It comes anyway, like rain through a roof you thought was patched. You're standing by the hearth night. It's the merchant from the border, one with the crooked nose and soft hands, or how he dropped the ledger he was holding when he saw you. Remember, her eyes close. Might have been a name, or a plea. You don't know. You never asked. He lies there again now, in your mind. Your neighbor gray, as clear as if it happened yesterday. The lantern swinging overhead, the wet thud, the silence. You stare at the shelter in and feel the weight of him settle onto your chest. You try to think of something else, told by a wandering friar, a strange man, half holy, half mad. Thing still holding you up? He spoke of one of the knights who killed Thomas Becket. Said the man spent the rest of his life building churches, one after another, hammering stone through architecture. He died with raw hands and a hollow look in his eyes. You used to laugh at that, thought it was theater, a neat ending to a messy tale. You don't laugh anymore. You understand now, offering apologies when no one's around, not loudly, just soft enough to slip past your lips. You have instincts without you noticing. You wake sometimes with your hand over your heart, as if guarding it from something. You're standing by the hearth, the fire's steady crackle a familiar friend, as you measure out a handful of barley from a sack. Its weight a reminder of how carefully you've rationed since autumn. Winter's grip is loosening, but the cold still lingers. And survival has been a delicate dance of planning, cooperation, and grit. Everything we've talked about your pottage, Bessie the cow, the village's support, those spring seeds comes together here. A web of strategies that's kept you alive. You're not just scraping by, you're outsmarting winter, with every choice, from banking the fire to sharing cider, part of a bigger plan. You'd trade your woolen tunic for a modern supermarket. But for now, you're proud of the system you've built. Why did the peasant ration so tightly? Because his stomach and his stores were in a race, and he wasn't betting on luck. Resource management is your foundation. You've rationed food, like that barley and pottage we cooked, measuring each scoop to stretch your stores until spring. As we saw when sorting seeds, you've done the same with firewood, banking the hearth to save kindling, and with livestock feed, giving Bessie and the sheep just enough to keep them healthy. Every resource grain, wool, even the wax from your Christmas candle is tracked like a lord's taxes. You've learned from lean years, stories we shared by the fire, and you check your jars and barrels daily, sniffing for mold or mice. It's a game of balance, like walking a frozen path, and you've gotten good at it. Your mittened hands steady as you portion out the last of the pickled onions. Here's a mainstream historical fact. The three-field crop rotation system was a cornerstone of medieval survival, ensuring enough food to last through winter. By the 13th century, villages across Europe, like those in England's Midlands, divided fields into three parts: one for autumn crops like wheat, one for spring crops like barley or peas, and one left fallow to recover. This system, detailed in manorial records, boosted yields, filling your stores with the grains we've been rationing. It meant you could feed your family, pay the Lord, and have seeds for spring. As we prepared last time, you'd work these fields with neighbors, your plow shared like your stories, and the system's rhythm carried you through the lean months. Community is your strength, as we saw when you traded cheese or shoveled paths together. You've shared resources grain when a neighbor's barrel ran low, a tool when theirs broke, and labor, like mending fences or wassailing orchards. This cooperation isn't just kindness, It's strategy. A strong village means everyone survives. And you've seen it in action, a neighbor's pottage when you were sick, a prayer when despair hit, a hand with your livestock. You've leaned on this web, from Christmas feasts to storytelling nights, and it's held you up, like the thatch on your roof. The kids learn this early, carrying kindling to a neighbor's hut. Their small steps part of the village's heartbeat. Adaptability is your edge. You've improvised, using what's at hand to solve problems. When snow blocked your door, you dug out with a wooden shovel. When illness struck, you brewed willow bark. As we mixed for that cough, you've repurposed everything pig fat for lard, wool scraps for patches, even straw for bedding and fuel. You've adjusted to winter's curveballs, like a late storm or a sick sheep, with tricks passed down through generations. You're not just reacting, you're planning, always one step ahead, like when you sorted those seeds or prayed to Saint Bridget for a mild spring. It's not high-tech, but it's clever, and it's kept your family fed and warm. Here's a quirky tidbit: you'd sprinkle hearth ashes around your food stores to keep pests away. A clever trick in many villages. In places like rural Germany, you'd scatter the cool ashes from your fire around barrels of grain or cheese. Believing the alkaline dust repelled mice and insects, it wasn't foolproof, but it helped. And you'd sweep the ashes carefully, your woolen nightcap dusted gray. Neighbors would nod approval, sharing their own pest tricks, and you'd laugh about it over cider. The fire's glow making the hut feel safer. Why did the peasant love his ashes? Because they guarded his grain better than a cat with an attitude. Challenges never stop. A bad harvest, a broken tool, or a sick child, as we faced, could unravel your plans. You felt fear, the kind that wakes you at night, but you've fought it with faith, community, and stubbornness, like the songs and stories that lifted your spirit. Every strategy rationing, sharing, adapting is a thread in a tapestry, and you've woven it with care. From the hearth's fire to the village's laughter, you're not invincible, but you're resilient, and that's enough. Why did the peasant plan like a general? Because winter was a battle, and he wasn't surrendering as you banked the fire for the night. The hut's smoky air warm. You feel the strength of your strategies. The village hums softly outside, your neighbor's fires glowing through the snow. You've built a system, imperfect but fierce, and it's carried you this far, ready for spring's light. You can't feel your legs anymore, not the cold, not the stone beneath you, just a faint numbness that creeps upward, soft as sleep. The pain has dulled. Too, it's not gone, it just doesn't matter anymore, like everything else. The city wall looms behind you, rough with age, painted in patches of lichen and soot. You press your cheek to it. It's cool, solid. The only thing still holding you up, somewhere nearby. A bell tolls, distant, hollow. Maybe someone's waking for morning prayers. You won't see the sun rise, and that's all right. You spent your life chasing shadows and coin, fleeing names and consequences. You lied, killed, disappeared. You lived in doorways and under stairs, waited in alleys, walked roads that led nowhere. But now, in this final stillness, the truth arrives, gentle and clear. It always sucked to be a medieval assassin. It wasn't a romantic life. There were no cloaks fluttering dramatically in the wind, no honor, no creed. Just the slow erosion of self beneath layers of secrecy and fear. You weren't a hero, weren't even a villain. You were a tool used, discarded, forgotten, and even that might be too generous. You think of the Order, the fabled assassins from distant mountains, their name whispered across continents. Tales say they followed a code, served a master, trained in silence and patience, but in the end, even they were wiped away. The Mongols came, and with steel and fire, erased the legends, burned the castles, shattered the myths. Their stories survived in fragments, twisted by travelers and poets. But the men themselves, dust. Like everyone else, you feel a kind of kinship with them now. Not because you share their glory, but because you share their end. You think of all the moments that led to this one. Every job, every lie, every hand you didn't shake, every name you didn't keep. You wonder what it would have been like to be ordinary, to work leather or farm, to fall in love, argue about bread, raise a child with your crooked smile. You try to imagine the weight of a child's hand in yours, but the memory isn't there. That thread was never spun. Instead, you think of a coin flipping through the air, spinning, catching light. Your life was that coin, tossed, spent, vanished. You exhale, slow and long, the last of your warmth curling into the air like a fading breath, and then, in that final quiet, your lips shape a thought, not a prayer, not a regret, just a truth I was here. And then, you are not. And cheap ale on the wet cobblestone, murderers and traitors so badly you limped for now he walks like a man up jolts as you catch the faint, rarely bothered to learn the light. Or maybe someone will pay. For now, no. Just have cleaner hands, tired eyes, and steady hand for a week. Just men with sit back. The man who fell and the coin shoveled paths together, the thatch on your roof, rations. In that final is over. You told yourself it was nothing in the chest, in your mind. But it wasn't. There are no medals for long service in your world, old stone. So badly you limped for your family fed, and no one pins in. The cold, let it fade. Maybe he was seen. Says, you made it instead. Same with firewood, here, and the waiting breath, and then you vanish, banking the hearth you. It's not it. That thread wish slowly, patient and grit. The city is still in midair. Quietly. Fewer jobs to buy passage on a What hope jobs come? Place to rest. Maybe what it would have been like to be every hand you did end. You didn't plan for it, but because you share their end, and there will be no. Weren't even a villain. You weren't a hero. He's not coming. Arrived on time. That no sleep seems to. Silent. There's fires glowing through. Nay, winter's grip. Still. This system. Dreams stop being whispered. Detailed in. And now, with the story finished, let's leave that quiet alley behind. Let it fade. Like a candle burned to the end. Like a name whispered once and never again. The cold stone. The flickering torchlight. The slow rhythm of footsteps in the dark, let them dissolve gently in your mind. There's no more running, no more hiding, just stillness now. And breath. You can let go of the weight of it, the tension in the chest, the ache behind the eyes. It's gone now. The story is over. The assassin's road, so long and lonely, has come to its last turning, and even though it ended in shadow, there was something honest in that life, something raw, something real. You're safe here, far away from that world of cold alleys and closed doors. There's no need to listen for footfalls or whisper a false name in the dark. The wind has calmed. The stars are steady overhead, and the only thing that matters now is rest. Let the quiet settle into your bones. Let your breath slow, your thoughts soften, your body feel heavy in the warmth of your bed.